Small overhand loop knot, ease it down and trim away the tag end using some titanium braid blades. The end of the hook link should be threaded through the back of the hook eye, and the hook that we prefer for this rig is an Armour Point SSC. A boil is threaded onto the hair so that we can measure the exact length. 15mm between the bend of the hook and the top of the bait is just right. Now we form the knotless knot, each whipping neatly placed behind the previous one. About 5 or 6 turns is right, and this should be done with the coated section. When the whipping is finished, it's threaded back through to exit from the front of the hook eye. Next, a shot is pinched onto the hook link exactly in between the end of the whipping and the top of the boilie. The other end of the hook link uses a loop, again tied with a figure of 8 loop knot. This allows us to use the quick change swivel system. Trim away the tag end and slide the quick change sleeve into position. The rig can now be placed over the quick change swivel, which in this instance we've used with a safety bolt clip. In situ, the rig looks unusual. As you can see, the boilie sits up, the hook sits flat on the lake bed, anchored by the shot. Try not to have the shot suspended mid-water. It should be on the bottom with the boilie above it. A very different presentation, which is unusual, and as Max says, we're not quite sure why it works, but it certainly does. Give it a go, I think you'll be impressed. Okay, well that just about wraps it. Before we go, we've got one last rig to show you. This is what is commonly called the chod rig, and it's actually been around for a very long time, but it's been revived in popularity recently, hasn't it? It's become back into the magazines.
I think years ago I would have known that as a silt rig.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it isn't actually anything new, but it is an extremely good rig. It's one that I use for a large percentage of my fishing. And find it absolutely superb. Now, there's a few key things to show you here. It tends to be mounted on a length of leg core. One of the reasons for that is that it provides counterbalance to the pop-up. Now, it's always used with a pop-up, and on the bottom it's going to sit like that. Okay, so the leg core pins it down nicely, holds everything flush, and the rig is trapped between 2 beads, which are mounted on a piece of silicone tubing or a piece of shrink tube. Now, the nice thing about the chod rig is that you fish it up the lead core away from the lead. Now, combined with a very short, stiff hook link, this is made from 25-pound rigidity, in effect it means that you're practically just casting the lead. So, for distance fishing, there is nothing that casts as well as this, and it really can't tangle. There is nothing to tangle whatsoever. It's dead stiff, and it's very short. Like I said, it's always used with a pop-up bait, and it's mounted onto a small D-ring on the shank of the hook, which here is a size 6 SSSP. Okay, we'll show you how to make the rig, and we'll be back in a minute. The hook we're using in this instance is a size 6 SSSP Armour Point, and we're going to attach that knotless knot style, as we have for all of the rigs, to 25-pound rigidity. You'll notice there's a short piece pointing up the hook, and we're going to keep that about 3 centimetres long so that we can create a D after we've formed the knotless knot. We're going to whip up the shank exactly as we have previously, and when the whipping is complete, we're going to thread the end of the hook link back through so it exits the front of the hook eye. And once that's done, ease the knot down and pull it up nice and tight. Now, the tag end, we're going to place a Teflon rig ring over the end of the tag and then thread it through so it also exits through the front of the hook eye. Next, we trim it down so there's about 2 or 3 mil left, And then carefully, using a lighter, we're going to create a blob to secure everything in place. Now, I like to protect the hook link and the whipping with my finger and thumb during this to make sure they cannot be singed. You need to take care and be careful doing this. Once that's melted down, extend the D out and shape it perfectly. I like to use the end of a tension bar to get the right shape. The other end of the rigidity is tied off using a blood knot to the flexi ring swivel. You can use as little as 2 turns on this material, it simply won't slip. It can be blobbed for extra security. As you can see here, trimming it down, leaving a 2 or 3 mil tag end, and then using the lighter it's blobbed off. Again, protect the areas you don't want to get burnt using your finger and thumb. You'll soon know if the flame gets too close. Place a gentle curve into the hook link, which creates a very good hooking angle, and that's the hook section perfectly finished. Now this is then mounted onto leg core, and to create this bit we're going to slide a quick change sleeve onto the leg core leader. Here we're using a ready tied spliced leg core leader which terminates in a quick change swivel which we've used to attach the lead. The sleeve then slides down over the eye of the lead to make everything nice and tidy. The other end of the leg core we're going to slide on the rig itself, which is flanked on either side by a camo flexi bead. And this assembly is then also slid down the leg core towards the lead. Lastly, a piece of camo silicone tubing, 0.75mm, about 20mm long, is slid onto the leg core using the lip close needle again, and is then slid all the way down to our required position. Now, the beads, the swivel ring, and the rig are trapped onto the silicone using the tension between the eye of the bead and the silicone, and that whole assembly can then be slid up and down the leg core to our required position. If we're fishing in deep silt, then it can be set further up away from the lead. In clear water it's sometimes best to fish it away from the lead, but for most fishing a distance of about 18 inches up from the lead is about right. Now the finished rig in situ looks something like this. You can see a really nice curve to the rigidity which creates fantastic hooking potential. The rig can rotate through 360 degrees and it holds the hook bait up nice and proud and straight. A very, very effective rig which is great for long distance fishing, and as we said before is completely anti-tangle. Well, that was all fairly straightforward. It's a rig that I use a lot and I have used for quite a few years. Very, very effective. You going to give it a go, Max?
Yeah, I think I will. I have to say it's one that I don't use. I used years and years ago, but I don't use very much now. But I think it's one that I'll probably have to start looking at again.
It's in terms of distance casting, there's nothing that can beat it.
Yeah, you can see that it would just fly like an arrow. I mean,
yeah,
it's effectively like just casting pure lead, isn't it?
It is very much so. And I think the other nice thing about it is that because you move your rig up away from the lead, if you are fishing blind, maybe casting to fish that are showing, then you can cast this, and generally it's going to be, unless it's really thick weed, you're going to be fishing effectively.
Which again, I mean, you just mentioned weed, but it's fair to say that like standard helicopter rigs really isn't very good in weed, and you shouldn't really use it, should you?
Yeah, that's true. In really thick weedy situations, helicopter rigs can work against you, and then you'd be better off with a lead ejection system. But for fishing over soft bottoms or light bottom weed and knowing that you've got a good presentation, this is very, very good.
Yeah, you can see how that's going to nail them.
Definitely, yeah. And it's worth showing what happens when you do nail one. The bottom bead pops off, and hook link travels down to the lead there, and during the course of the fight the lead will just sit against the cheek of the fish quite safely.
And if you want any more proof that works, if you know Christian in Germany landed the last fish of last season, the first fish of this season were both 70s, weren't they?
That's right.
Both on the chod rig. So
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. How much more proof do you need that it works than that?
Yeah, absolutely.